So The Acolyte, which is a show that pretty much everyone's probably going to uh, be, everyone's getting inundated right now with everybody dunking on it. I suspect the news cycle on, the various platforms out there, Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey, YouTube, all these, various platforms, they're probably going to be moving past the coverage on The Acolyte by next week. I mean, I covered this yesterday. There was the star of the show. It's a Star Wars show that basically everyone hates. The star of the show released a diss track about Star Wars fans who were mean to her. Now, I didn't see any real evidence of that. I didn't see any evidence of people saying terrible things to her. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but in general, I think when somebody's like, hey, people are saying mean things to me and they're doing this, that, and the other thing, and then they show an example of it, like in general, that's what I would, that's what I would kind of expect. Well, now, you had obviously the Acolytes are Amanda Stenberg. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep saying Amanda. Her name is Amandala. Amandala Stenberg slams intolerable people in diss track after weeks of anti-woke mean words. I'm not going to go through the song. I already did that. I already talked about how just out of control and hilarious it was. But now we've talked about other topics. So the Acolyte has really angered fans over its ability to preserve lore, the lore of the show, okay? Because we have things like, fire in space, which is not even humanly possible. We have things like, the Anakin Skywalker story being completely destroyed by new lore. We have that the Force is literally female. And we have that the Force is no longer called the Force. It's called the Thread. They have, a coven of witches that apparently definitely aren't romantically involved with each other. That everyone's making fun of. So everybody's poking fun at all the most obvious things that people should be poking fun at. And the showrunner is big mad about that. Big mad. By the way, I don't know if you knew this, but, if you get a chance to, I'm running an awesome promotion, promo code RIP Star Wars over on coffeebrandcoffee.com. 10% off site-wide. We have our best-selling blueberry cobbler flavor. Our dark roast is really well. Our cold brew bags are out now. Those are extremely popular for summer. It makes cold brews really easy. We have K-Cups, our strawberries and cream. We have a brand new dark roast called our brand new Silky Dark Night roast. So many things. So promo code RIP Star Wars, 10% off. Give us a try. We roast everything ultra small batch on demand. This isn't some your run-of-the-mill kind of drop ship operation. So I hope you'll check that out. Instead, everyone needs a little coffee while they're watching The Acolyte, right? Link in the description. So The Acolyte showrunner Leslie Headland said that her, quote, most important piece of art is being dismantled, says it's reductive to describe the all-female witches' covens as LGBTQ. Now, the reason people are saying that is because this woman herself said that this show was the most LGBTQ Star Wars that has ever existed. They did an interview that said that it was, quote-unquote, the most LGBT Star Wars ever, and that she was really excited about that. Just so people know, Leslie is also married to a woman. She also exercised nepotism, put that woman in her show. People said that her wife is a terrible actress. Oh, by the way, they also had another recent lore breaking with Mundi, who wasn't even alive yet, according to established canon. So anyway, speaking with the Hollywood Reporter, the showrunner said, honestly, I feel sad that people would think that if something were LGBTQ, that would be bad. Nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying that it's bad for that. People are saying that, you're focusing on the wrong thing. The thing is, what Leslie Headland is saying, what Disney is saying, what, all of these kind of people that push quote unquote the message, right? They're always talking about, why would you say it's bad? We're not saying it's bad, but what we're also saying is just because they're women who date women, that does not make it inherently good. Just like them, whatever their dating preferences are, doesn't make it bad. It also doesn't make it good. And so people point that out and say like, hey, this isn't really this really isn't a personality trait. This isn't exactly something that we care about in terms of, Star Wars lore and this, that, and the other thing. So they will spin that into like, oh, you must have a problem with it. Well, no, it's just that's not why people watch Star Wars. You see, the showrunner would also, this is via thatparkplace.com, by the way. The showrunner would also address her interview with the Wrap where she said that she was, quote, into the fact that the Acolyte would be, quote, the most LGBTQ Star Wars ever made. In the original interview below, Leslie Headland feigned surprise that making Star Wars LGBT would not be a talking point. She said, is it going to be a talking point?
I want to ask you both because this is, I would say, arguably the gayest Star Wars, I think, by a considerable margin. And are you excited about that? Are you bracing yourself? Not the gayest Star Wars. Not the... It's pretty gay, let's be honest.
I mean, I don't disagree with him. It's like, this is a talking point. Nobody's talking, when they're talking about this, okay? When they're talking about this, they're not talking about the special effects, which is what a lot of people loved about the original Star Wars. It was industry leading. It was groundbreaking. They're not talking about the battle scenes, the fight scenes. They're not talking about the acting. They're not talking about the comedy. They're not talking about, they're talking about who these characters choose to sleep with, which is, not even in the top 50 reasons that anyone watches Star Wars. Actress Amanda Stenberg then chimed in by saying, because nerds are LGBTQ. When the Wrap's interviewer said, well, some nerds are very not LGBT, and they're very threatened by it. Stenberg responded, well, that's true, but in my world, all nerds are LGBT. When asked if this was a fun element, Headland responded, no, I don't think so, and yet people have told me that it's the LGBTQ most Star Wars, and I'm into it. Next, Amanda Stenberg declared, I think it was pretty gay already. I mean, have you seen the, quote, fits? I don't really know. Now, Headland tells the Hollywood Reporter, quote, I was surprised by the question. Amanda and I just burst out laughing because that's our knee-jerk reaction to being asked something like that. No, you did that on purpose, right? The design of the show, the show's, what the characters' preferences were baked into the show on purpose. You had a whole dialogue back and forth about using they, them pronouns. By the way, I talk about this stuff every day on my live stream, which is now back at 1 p.m. Eastern. I co-host with Styx Hexenhammer Mondays and Wednesdays, Melanie Mack on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and on Friday I go solo. And sometimes I bring in guests. So make sure that you remember that time zone change. Headland would also address the LGBTQ space witches she introduced in the third episode of the show. In fact, they were confirmed to be LGBT in a puff piece by Brooke Barnes in the New York Times before an episode of the show ever even aired, because this is all they care about. They only care about spreading the message and their political ideologies. They don't actually care about putting together a good show. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the truth of it. They don't care. I would say this. Members of the LGBTQ community are 100% welcome in my viewership, in my audience, in my comment section. And I don't accept people being mean to them just for that fact. I don't tolerate that. But I think oftentimes having that, when I talk about like, hey, there's more to the show than just who these people are in bed with. People often get that mixed up with having a problem with it. I don't have any problem with it. It's fine by me. Doesn't affect my life in any way, shape, or form. Okay. I have, my co-host Melanie might have something to say about it, and she's entitled to her opinion, but I don't care about it. It doesn't bother me. But what bothers me is when there's not a good show, and the only thing you have to show for it, or the only thing you can battle criticism with, is by saying, oh, well, you just don't like them because you're a bigot or something like that. Despite the show marketing the space witches as LGBT, Headland now tells THR, oh, well, they're in a matriarchal society. As an LGBT woman, I knew it would read that they were, but there also aren't very men in their community. So closeness between the two of them would be natural. It seemed plot-driven. She stated, I would say it's just really reductive to call them LGBT. I think that means you're not really paying attention to the story. Nobody cares about that. Nobody cares about that. Here you have two women who had a baby using the Force. I mean, that's a literal thing in the show. By the way, show is also now at a 14%. I don't know what else to tell people. I don't have any issue with who these characters are spending their bedtime with off screen, but it's the only marketing tactic they have. So I don't really know how they can act like, oh, well, I don't know why everyone's suddenly saying this. I don't know why everyone's suddenly... It's because that's all you've been saying. That's all they've been saying since Jump Street. It's nonsense. People need to continue to tune out to this stuff, and then don't let the media say, hey, you're just not watching because you have a problem with... No. You just keep reminding them that the writing stinks, and until they stop focusing on that stuff, it will continue to stink. And once they stop focusing on it, and then who these characters' love interests are naturally fit into the story, then you'll return. And until such a point, you will continue to watch literally anything else. It's pretty easy to boycott.